Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
Stone Cold versus Vince McMahon is one of the craziest beefs ever, and it was so simple. Worker versus boss. Super relatable, you know. Who wouldn't want to give your boss a beer bath or hit him with a pan? I'd personally get a butter sock and go to town with it, but to each its own. This is arguably the greatest feud in wrestling history, and I know all my OGs are gonna love this one. And for my youngins, grab some popcorn or whatever you weirdos eat nowadays and enjoy. But also for the OGs, if I miss anything or if you have any special memories with this, then go ahead and share them in the comments. But without any further ado, let's follow through. Stone Cold versus Vince McMahon. For this feud, we have to go back to 1997. So in 1997, the WWE would be on the rise again with the Attitude Era changing the game and being the peak for a lot of wrestling fans. Monday Night Wars were going strong and the WWF was getting raw dogged by WCW. They upped the score so badly, but this feud would basically completely turn the tide. Attitude Era was an edgy, no F's given product that if you grew up watching a PG era and you accidentally saw an episode of Raw in this era, you'd be traumatized. You had pimps with hoe trains, Asians getting a man's wee-wee cut off, you had DX saying F-bombs and telling people to suck it, we had The Undertaker sacrificing Stephanie. There's no other way to put it. It was batshit crazy. DX would have crowd popping titties and Shawn doing the Sheldon Cooper techniques. I'm going to hell for that one. But this feud would basically start after Stone Cold would be surrounded by police and Vince would come off commentary and try to reassess the situation. Stone Cold was sidelined with an injury, so he wasn't clear to compete, but staying at home, it was eating him alive, so he wanted to come out and do what he does best. Vince was trying to calm him down, but Stone Cold wasn't hearing any of this. And in one of the craziest moments ever, Stone Cold stunned Vince for the first time, and it was magic. Legendary commentary, legendary moment, and what a visual. Stone Cold and Vince will meet again a couple weeks later, and Vince wanted Stone Cold to sign a form saying that if he got injured, the WWF wouldn't be at fault. Stone Cold was down, but in return, he wanted Owen Hart in an IC title match. He wanted Owen because Owen hit Austin with the pile driver that shortened his career, and that's the reason he was out. Austin was against all odds like Tupac, and in the coming months, he was damn near feuding with the entire world. In this segment, Stone Cold would take Jerry Lawler's crown and kick that thing to Shell City, and this guy was a charisma machine. Stone Cold is such an icon, and he's so important to not only wrestling, but the entire world. I had to cop the Stone Cold shirt, by the way. Let me know if you mess with it. But anyways, Stone Cold would be at his ranch chilling, and WWF would send camera crew and staff to interview Austin. This whole segment is gold with great line after great line, and Stone Cold would break down a care package that the WWF sent to him, and he wasn't going for any of it. Stone Cold would then pull out a bow and arrow with pictures of JR, Gorilla Monsoon, and Vince on a deer, and he was going to town. He had one more picture though, and it was Owen Hart on the deer's ass. Bro, it was looking like Skyrim out here. I know Stone Cold was probably like a crazy hunter. He was just bow, bow, bow. He was going in. Owen and Brett were like Stanley and SpongeBob though. I swear, they destroyed everything and had the worst luck ever. It's actually scary how much bad luck they had, but rest in peace to Owen. Austin would beat Owen at Survivor Series for the IC title, and on the episode of Raw, Stone Cold would forfeit the title to The Rock, hype him up a little bit, shake his hand, then drop his ass with a stunner, and take the belt back. Austin would do a victory lap around the ring, came back, and he would run the ropes and knock Vince off the ropes. I was crying, bro. But you always hear stories about how great Austin was, but you never know until you actually watch it yourself. I'm telling you, he had me laughing every segment. He's definitely above the hype. But we would also find out exactly what he wanted to do with the title. The Rock would be cutting a promo, but it would cut to Stone Cold by the Piscataqua River, and Stone Cold would toss the IC title into the river, and Fanny Pack Rock was pissed. These segments were really molding Austin to be the golden boy, and especially with Brett leaving, it made Vince pull the trigger, and Stone Cold wanted that spot badly. Austin would go on to win the 1998 Royal Rumble, and it was a scary sight. The next night on Raw, Vince would introduce Mike Tyson, and Vince was jazzing Mike up, and Stone Cold wasn't having any of this. Stone Cold came out and sold the party, and my God, this is the craziest aura off I've ever seen. My screen was shaking, I was shaking, your mom's bed was shaking. Oopsies. But Austin would run down Tyson on the mic, bars, and then to top it all off, he would flip Tyson off, and Tyson would push Austin, and all hell broke loose. Mike Tyson was so scary, but when he started talking, it was just so weird, like all of his swag just came off. But if Mike beats Jake though, he's the GOAT, I don't care. But Vince was throwing a BF though, he was screaming at Austin, "You ruined it, you ruined it." And he started swinging. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen on TV. I love sports, I like a lot of TV shows, but when wrestling is at its best, nothing's better. You could just do anything with it, and it's live, so you could have any crossovers as well. It's just incredible. Shawn Michaels was the WWF champion around this time, and at WrestleMania 14, it will be Austin versus Michaels with Mike Tyson as the enforcer. So on Raw, in March, Vince would call out Mike out to the ring, and he would get interrupted again. But this time, it wasn't by Stone Cold. It was by DX. Shawn was ready to clear the air between him and Mike, and I know Vince was ready to end it all. Two of his biggest ops, DX and Austin, were running the show, and I'd be sick. Well, Shawn told Mike's crew to get out, and he told DX to leave as well. It's a pretty respectable move. He wanted to run some ones, and Shawn was about to throw the first punch, but instead of punching Mike Tyson, he ripped off his shirt, and underneath his shirt was a DX t-shirt. This was so cold. The baddest man on the planet and the enforcer of Mania 14 had joined DX. Time stood still. Rocking a DX shirt with Tim's with a cracked out bimbo with a cowboy hat dancing around the ring. It was definitely a sight to behold. DX shirt with the Tim's though is a tough look. I'm stealing that for sure, I don't care. But also, this took place in Cleveland, Ohio as well. So Cleveland finally got something good. I appreciate it, WWE. But low-key, Cleveland be having like great segments. I remember at the top of my head, like this happened. John Cena and The Rock, the concert took place in Cleveland as well. I think Shane buying WCW happened in Cleveland as well. But I have to check that. But now it was time for WrestleMania 14. Stone Cold versus Shawn Michaels with Mike Tyson as a special enforcer who just joined DX. This was going to be a movie. March 29th, 1998, taking place in Boston, Massachusetts. Shout out to John Cena. But with an attendance of 19,028 Bronze Arena fans, now I'm just playing, he's about 12. And a buy rate of 730,000. This was going to be good. But towards the end of the match, the ref would get bodied and Shawn and Austin would go back-to-back finishers. But Austin would finally hit the stunner and Tyson would come in and do a fast count on Shawn. This was probably such a surreal moment for the 80s and 90s kids. You gotta salute it. But Austin would hand Tyson an Austin 316 shirt, but Shawn was having none of this. Shawn would get in his grill and go for a punch, but Tyson would catch it and sock him, and Shawn was out like a light. What a main event, what a feud, what a celebrity cameo, what a rush. But Stone Cold was the new WWF champion. And I just gotta say, 90s Shawn was tough. His swag was off the charts. So the aura in this ring hit different. You had prime Shawn like in a swaggy phase, you had prime Tyson, and you had prime Stone Cold Steve Austin in the same ring. This was incredible. But this would also be Shawn's last match for a very long time. Shawn and Bret both leaving. It left two huge spots to fill. But guess what, Crodies? They actually prepared this time because if it were to happen now, WWE would be begging for help and they wouldn't know what to do. But back then, they had The Rock and Stone Cold to step up and fill those shoes and probably even take the WWF a little bit further, let's be honest. Raw after WrestleMania, Vince would bring out Austin and give him a new WWF title. Nobody ever talks about it, but the blue strap title looked amazing. Vince would congratulate Stone Cold, but Stone Cold wasn't buying it. Vince wanted Stone Cold to be more of a corporate champion and be more of a company guy. Stone Cold said, and hit him with a stunner. If you didn't understand by now, I think Stone Cold hates Vince, guys. But this was fat. Stone Cold wasn't gonna get away with it this time though. Vince called the cops like a Karen who just saw a black guy with dreads, and Stone Cold would get arrested. Stone Cold would go to jail and he would get one phone call. But on the same show, he would call JR and he told him next week that he'd be back. Fast forward the next week, he was back, but in a suit. Stone Cold finally bought in, but it wasn't quite good enough. Vince wanted Stone Cold in some Gucci shoes and to take the hat off. Stone Cold joined the Kiss My Ass Club and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Stone Cold even brought out a camera and took some pictures. I was about to karate chop my TV. But we need the old Stone Cold. But Stone Cold came to his senses, took the suit off, put on his black undies like an old tired dad that just came home from work, and he ball tapped McMahon and took a picture just to add insult to injury. Our boy was back. This was the final straw though. Vince tried cops, he tried Mike Tyson, probably tried to call God, that wasn't gonna work, but nothing was working. So Vince took it upon himself to end Stone Cold. It was gonna be Stone Cold versus Vince on Raw for the WWF Championship. Props to Vince though, he was huge. It was a ruse though. Stone Cold said he could beat Vince with one arm tied behind his back, so Vince outplayed him. Vince put out the receipts. Vince's sackwaggers were giving him massages and stuff, and I know some of the people in our last comment section would love to do that to Vince. But anyways though, before the match started, Dude Love came out to try and make peace. Hearing his tone, it really just painted the picture that Sami Zayn is this generation's Mick Foley. It's like 100% at this point. But anyways, Dude Love hit Stone Cold with the mandible claw, and I was so lost. Then it all made sense to me. Dude Love was on Vince's payroll. Dude fell for the Easy Eat Pussy and Pancakes deal, and now it was Dude Love versus Stone Cold for the title at Unforgiving. Stone Cold would hit Vince with a chair shot to the head, hit Dude Love with a stunner, and counted the pin himself. I've seen enough, he's the GOAT. But this was so badass. They would have a rematch at Over the Edge. Stone Cold would still retain even with the McMahon as a special guest ref. Vince was through at this point, so he threw out his last Pokemon, Kane. Stone Cold versus Kane in the first blood match at King of the Ring. This is the most rigged match ever, bro. He has a red mask on talking about some first blood. But Stone Cold would lose after Undertaker accidentally hit him with a chair and he started bleeding. Stone Cold was still up though. It was like 70-1, but still a win is a win. The next night after the pay-per-view though, Stone Cold would get a rematch against Kane for the title and he'd win it back. But Stone Cold would also want to get his get back against Taker, so he would face him at SummerSlam and beat him. Vince would set up a triple threat match where Taker and Kane pin Austin at the same time, so Vince decided to vacate the WWF Championship and kick Austin out of the match to beat a ref. That was a lot of words. I feel like Eminem right now, but I try to further up the parts that don't really matter. I'm trying to do the main story, you know what I'm saying? So be patient. But of course, Austin wouldn't go for that, and he didn't count for any of them. Kane and Taker would then team on him, and he would raise hell. I also want to mention a little bit before this that Stone Cold would drive a Zamboni to the ring and jump off just to get to Vince. This guy is such a legend. But how does he know to drive this many different machines, man? Like, I could drive a stock picker and a tow motor. This guy could drive tractors, Zambonis, beer trucks. Shit's crazy. But they were doing a crazy segment like this every single week. Now, we get stuff like this once every 5 years. But this pairing was so perfect. Vince played his part perfectly, and Stone Cold was the most over man in America, and JR was the perfect announcer slash hype man. But Stone Cold would once again get arrested though, but after this, Stone Cold would do something much worse. Stone Cold would fill Vince's Corvette full of cement. Having Stone Cold as an op gotta be worse than having like 50 Cent as an op. But just to fill you in a little bit, Vince was in a wheelchair because Taker and Kane would warn Vince not to mess with them. And just like The Rock in that one interview, Vince would get caught flipping off The Undertaker. And man, this guy would get beat into next week, dog, and they would just drop steel steps on his leg, everything. This was bad. But Vince's selling was incredible. Vince would go to the hospital and he'd get some visitors. Mankind would visit Vince. And you know, he tried to make some peace and bring some pizzazz to Vince's life. But you know, it didn't work. He just wanted him to get out of here. The head nurse would take it from here, and it would be none other than Stone Cold himself. But Vince would get beat up with an oxygen tank on, a cast, and in his tidy whities. So with that in perspective, let's just go back to the pay-per-view. But Vince would finally pull the trigger. He would finally fire Stone Cold, but it wouldn't be the last we saw of him. The next week, Stone Cold would kidnap Vince. It was just legendary segment after legendary segment. Stone Cold would push Vince into the ring. Vince would be crawling around like a baby, and Stone Cold would make Vince study some film. Stone Cold then put out the Glock like he was Arn Anderson, but Vince's eyes were looking two different directions like Biggie, and Stone Cold fooled him with a prop gun. Vince then pissed himself, and he got hit with a stunner. Say what you want, but Vince is such a legend. It takes balls to do this and embarrass himself on TV so many times. But the next week, Stone Cold revealed that he had a new contract with one guaranteed title shot, and Vince then called his son incompetent, and man, even in the 90s, Vince was still dogging Shane. Shane then revealed that he resigned Stone Cold. Shane then told him about his tragic life story, and he talked about Vince's corporate parties. God only knows the terror that came from those parties. But after this, at Survivor Series, Stone Cold would lose after Shane double-crossed him. The next night on Raw, The Rock would have to defend his title against Austin because of his contract. He even got the Judge Mills cosign. That's how you know it's valid. But the two would have the match, and all the Attitude Era shenanigans were there. All the Attitude Era really was Vince playing with toys but uncensored and in real life. Just look at Kane and The Undertaker back then. Like, I think that proves my theory is valid. But Taker would hit Stone Cold with a shovel, and it was a DQ. But fast forward to January 4th, 1999, it happened. The moment the tides changed. WCW tried to spoil it, but instead, they dug their own grave. 600,000 fans switched to watch this. The biggest pop in WWF history. War going on outside the ring. Stone Cold comes out, pops The Rock with a chair, and drags a lifeless Mankind over The Rock. They be on the floors of Motel 6s, but tonight and forever, Mick Foley will be known as WWF Champion. What a call by Michael Cole. What a moment. This was peak Attitude Era. Someone should host old school wrestling watch-alongs though. That would be so fire. But the next week though, they would damn near top it. They would be having a corporate rumble, but Vince would come out at the end and he thought he won. But China would come out and so would Stone Cold. This pop was so nuts. That glass shatter was tough. But China would throw Vince out and Vince damn near died, but Stone Cold didn't care. I don't know why, but I feel like in these days, like, Raw was better than pay-per-views. But now, they were at the Royal Rumble. Austin drew number 1 and Vince drew number 2, thanks to HBK, who was commissioner at the time. But they were brought everywhere in the crowd backstage by the concession area, and then Vince would go into the women's bathroom. Probably his main hideout. But anyways, it was a trap on some to catch a predator type shit, but the wrong one got jumped, but to each its own. But they would attack Austin and send him to the hospital. Kane would go nuts in this rumble, and Vince would take his ass back to commentary like it was the 80s. But mid-match, there would be an ambulance shown driving back to the arena. And it was none other than Stone Cold. Stone Cold would spin a block, empty the clip, and raise hell on everyone. He would eliminate the big boss man, or rest in peace by the way, and it would be down to 2. The Rock would come out and distract Stone Cold. Vince would come behind and eliminate Austin. Vince McMahon won the Royal Rumble. The Raw after the Rumble, Stone Cold would be shown with Shawn Michaels and they were scheming. Vince would give up his spot and Stone Cold would get the main event of WrestleMania instead. But Stone Cold would give up the spot if he lost to Vince in a steel cage match. Vince would accept and it was on. Vince would take one of the nastiest bumps ever in this match, and what a champ. From the top of the cage to the announce table, but the match never officially started. But this bump was still crazy. I don't care what anybody says. This was nuts. I think I remember playing this on WWE 13 or something. But they would put Vince on a stretcher, but Stone Cold wasn't finished. Stone Cold would have his match finished so many times, but Vince would sucker him back in with the middle fingers up. Big Show would then make his debut from under the ring and help Vince, but he would throw Stone Cold into the cage, and Stone Cold would break open and fall out and win. Even when he thought he won, Vince McMahon still lost. After this though, another legendary moment would happen. Stone Cold had another whip up his sleeve and he pulled up in a beer truck. Stone Cold would give the corporation a beer bath. This was so lit. But back in the day, I always used to debate who was better between Austin and The Rock. But I don't know. Watching old clips, it looks like Stone Cold was just on another level. But if you think whoever's better, just let me know in the comments if you were around during that time who was better. The Rock and Stone Cold have a match at Mania, and Stone Cold would win the title. The next Raw, Stone Cold told Vince that he wanted the Smoking Skull belt. But Stone Cold would celebrate, but Vince would do a hit and run. The next week, The Rock would be fishing at a bridge, and he had the Smoking Skull belt, and he was waiting for Austin. Austin pulled up, and it was on site. The Rock would throw Stone Cold off a bridge and the Smoking Skull belt with him. At Backlash on April 25th, 1999, with a buy rate of 400,000, Stone Cold would face The Rock in a rematch for the title, but Vince would hand Austin back the Smoking Skull belt and hit his own son Shane, who was the ref at that time. But also, The Undertaker would capture Stephanie here too. Raw, Vince would ask for Stone Cold's help. Stone Cold would decline, and at Over the Edge 1999, The Undertaker would defeat Stone Cold. But at the same show, Owen Hart would fall to his death, and I can only imagine how this affected everybody. Obviously, everybody involved, his friends and family, but the fans who literally saw it happen live, it's just so sad. But don't judge me, but when I was younger, I wanted to see what happened so badly, but it got wiped. You'll probably never be able to see this footage, unless you go like on the dark web or something, but I'm good on all that. But this definitely stayed in the WWF. That was during the wars too, so I know this was horrible for them. But forget wrestling. First things first, rest in peace, Owen Hart. But anyways, a couple weeks later, the higher power would get revealed. But before I reveal who it was, I just want to say that The Undertaker during this era was so ass. Like, he's a legend, 100%. But to me, he can never be the GOAT because he was never the standout star of the company in any era. Probably a hot take, but I had to get it off my chest. He's GOATed though, so don't get me wrong. But anyways, higher power would finally be revealed.
It's me, Austin! Oh, son of a...
What the hell was this? But after finding out it was him, just seeing him sit in the ring waiting to reveal himself is hilarious. I remember seeing a while ago that it was supposed to be like Christopher Daniels, but I don't know, that could have just been like Sean Ross clickbait. But they even played a pre-recording of Vince in the back just to sell this, but it was so funny. But Stephanie and Linda would come out, and now Vince was screwed. It was the men versus the women. But Vince definitely slept in his shed after this shit. But Linda kind of looked like Ellen a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But they would come out and announce that new rules were in place. And Vince's reaction was priceless. But Linda announces that she stepped down and there was a new CEO. And it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. But Vince might as well get the rope and stool out. But Stone Cold even came out in a tie. I'm crying. But the next week, it will be Austin's first day in the office.
And you already know I had to get some lines on this. But yeah, I'm like the swaggiest white boy alive. Bro, what's going on in my life? Alright, my fault for my rambling, but let's get right back into the video. So Stone Cold would make some changes to the WWF for the culture and show the receptionist the ropes. Stone Cold would then go to Vince's old office and 3 girls would instantly greet him. This is all the evidence I need to see if Vince's allegations are true. And let's be brutally honest, he's guilty as f. I'm gonna be so honest, I feel like Vince probably did some like sex storylines in his office, bro. Like with the girls, like, let's be honest, bro. If we're looking at Vince's character, like, you're telling me that's not like way too out of reach. Stone Cold would then have a board of directors meeting and he would just straight run this joint. He would fire Dennis. Man, not my man, Dennis. After firing Dennis, Stone Cold would immediately promote Jason. Then he hosted a beer drinking contest. How do you host a beer drinking contest on your first day on the job? He was one by one kicking out all of Vince's creepers and his terror squad, and he made this old guy's life worth living again. He probably hasn't been this happy since he's won his last bingo tournament of G7. Oh, while all this is going down, Shane and Vince are in the back on like watching like a little shitty TV. They're all watching this in distraught. Vince would then challenge Steve Austin to a handicap ladder match with Shane on his side and Austin's COO spot on the line. I was just roaming around and I came across one of the best segments I've ever seen in my whole life. Stone Cold put out a ladder and all of Vince's goons were in the ring talking. Shawn Michaels comes out of nowhere, comes up from the stage in booty shorts, and he was setting the record straight. Legit, me and Andrew were watching this shit go down, and bro, we were laughing and we were crying. It was probably one of the greatest things I think I've ever seen in my whole life. Then, if it couldn't get any more funny, Hulk Hogan's music was played, and then bro, I lost it. Vince's sack wads would come out, but bro, this was amazing. But just like, why Hulk Hogan's music? I genuinely want to know that. But anyways, they would have a match at King of the Ring. My chest was literally hurting from all the laughing, and it kept getting funnier. The match would happen at the end of the pay-per-view, and it was total bullshit. Shane was selling his bloodline, but at the end, the McMahons would be out cold. And when Stone Cold was about to win the match, the haunted briefcase would strike. It would go higher and higher so he couldn't grab it. Stone Cold was so mad, he went outside the ring and started pressing everybody on ringside. But the McMahons would go on to go win the match. The next night on Raw, Austin would then challenge for The Undertaker for the WWF title, and he would go on to win. The Undertaker would get a rematch at Fully Loaded in a First Blood match, where if Austin were to go on to lose, he would never compete for the WWF title ever again. But if he won, Vince would depart from the company. X-Pac would interfere and get Austin the win. Stone Cold would go on to hold the title until SummerSlam, where he lost it to Mankind in a triple threat match featuring Triple H. After this, Triple H would get a title shot and he would go on to win. And on an episode of SmackDown, Triple H would defend his title against a returning Vince McMahon. All the lackeys would come out, and Steve Austin would come out and help Vince win. I don't care what anyone says, Vince is tough. He would book himself to win the title against his son-in-law. I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of crazy. On the September 20th, 1999 episode of Raw, Stone Cold would reinstate Vince McMahon for a title shot. But in the typical Vince fashion, on September 27th episode of Raw, McMahon said he promised Stone Cold a title shot, but didn't say when. Not gonna lie, Stone Cold was pressing Vince, to be honest. But Vince said no matter what, at No Mercy, he would get a title shot, whoever was the champion. And at No Mercy, it was in Cleveland, by the way, so stop dissing my city on God. But in the main event, it would be Stone Cold versus Triple H for the title. At No Mercy, Austin would go on to lose after The Rock, aka the Final Boss. Y'all don't know about the Final Boss, but he would try to hit Triple H with a sledgehammer, but would end up hitting Stone Cold. The Rock, Triple H were advertised for a triple threat match at Survivor Series, but Austin was run down by his ops. But Stone Cold would be hit by a car. This would actually write him off TV for a neck injury that actually needed surgery. This injury 2 years prior was posing a real threat towards an early retirement for Austin. Austin would also go on to say this was the worst storyline that he was ever a part of. Stone Cold will return at Unforgiving on September 24th, 2000. After this, Commissioner Mick Foley will start an investigation to find out who ran down Austin. On October 9th, Mick Foley will find out that Rikishi ran down Austin. But like, why Rikishi? Like, I don't get it. In the same show, Rikishi would admit that he ran down Austin. Rikishi said he did it for his cousin, the Final Boss. Wow, the Final Boss be calling hits. Nah, I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of crazy. On the October 12th episode of SmackDown, Mick Foley would put a match together for No Mercy between Stone Cold and Rikishi. Stone Cold would come out saying that man took 9 months off my career and you want to give me a match? Foley then said it's not any match, it's a no holds barred match, and the match was on. During the match, Austin wanted to get some payback and run him down in a truck, but the officials prevented Austin from doing that, and then the match would go down as a no contest. And if that wasn't bad enough for Austin, he would get arrested. Really, bruh? My boy would get arrested for trying to get some payback? Like, nah, that's wild. On the November 6, 2000 episode of Raw, Austin would have a handicap match against Kurt Angle and Rikishi. Triple H came out to help Austin. What a great guy. But then Triple H would hit Stone Cold with a sledgehammer, and then he would say he called the hit on Austin. At Survivor Series, not gonna lie, I gotta get some credit to Rikishi for not snitching. They would try to run down Austin again at Survivor Series. But Austin wasn't having that. He would grab a forklift and lift Triple H's car 20 feet into the air on a forklift. I'm not gonna lie, shit's wild. And that's how the pay-per-view would end. On the December 11th episode of Raw, Vince McMahon would want Mick Foley to resign after he promised to keep everyone safe. Foley would say he needs one more action to take place, then he will resign. Then I hear the weirdest theme song I think I've ever heard in my whole life, but I was crying for real. But it was William Regal. On God, William Regal's a bum. But then he would come out and say that he speaks for Stone Cold. And Stone Cold came out and he was not having that. Stone Cold would give a stunner to Regal and the two randoms. Foley would put that dirty ass sock in McMahon's mouth. What y'all know about Mr. Socko? That shit was dirty as fuck. That like traumatized me as a kid for real.
But yeah, after this, Austin would go on to win his third Royal Rumble, which was insane as it was his third time winning. Austin would also end his feud with Triple H at No Way Out in a 3 Stages of Hell match where Austin lost 2-1. On the road to WrestleMania 17, Vince would do something very petty. One thing you don't do is mess with a man's wife. but Vince did it. Vince went after the last person Austin had left, his wife Deborah. He made Deborah The Rock's manager. Vince is a master manipulator. I think Deborah should ask for more paper and more paper and more paper. But yeah, a couple weeks later, Stone Cold would warn Vince about messing with Deborah. The Rock versus Stone Cold would take place at Mania X7, and some people say it's one of the best matches ever, and some people hated it. But regardless, it got a big reaction out of you. And that's what it's all about, alright. But everything we know and saw so far with this feud will completely be shook upside down. All the attempted murders, all the stunners, the screw jobs, everything would be forgiven. Stone Cold shook hands with the devil and beat The Rock. One thing I love about the WWF is their diversity and their way to adapt. They could have easily milked this for another few years, but they took a risk, and I have to respect it. If you're scared to take a chance, how the F we gonna get rich? Word to J. Cole. This, in a lot of people's minds, was the end of the Attitude Era, and what a way to go out. And rest in peace to one of the greatest wrestling eras of all time, and I know everybody misses it. But the next night on Raw, Vince would come out and JR was perplexed. Vince said everybody in the crowd kisses their boss's ass, and I'm not gonna lie, he has a point. But Stone Cold would completely control the crowd, and earlier in the video I talked about who was better between The Rock and Austin, but it was probably just Austin from 1997 to 1999, and The Rock from 2000 to 2002. But if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But Rock and Austin would have a steel cage rematch for the WWF Championship, and this was pure chaos. Vince would get bullied and put on his ass by the ref too, but seeing Vince and Austin stomp people out together was wild. Triple H came out to help, but instead, he hit The Rock with the sledgehammer. Thus, the two-man power trip was born. Shout out J. Cole again. But Triple H had a Raw shirt on too, I need that. But even with the steel cage out, Austin still caught all the beers, and they would embrace in the ring. I'm going to talk about the two-man power trip and death in a different video, because that team looked too badass to not talk about. But Jim Ross would have a sit-down interview with Stone Cold, and Stone Cold and JR were once best friends, and JR reminded him of that. Stone Cold would then beat the hell out of JR, and I was sad. Then Vince came out and started mocking JR and commentating on his downfall. It was hilarious, but it was sad. On the June 7th episode of SmackDown, Vince and Stone Cold will be on the same team, competing for the tag titles. If you were in a coma for 2 years, then you turned WWF on again, and you were tripping balls probably. They would third party and somehow still lose. Benoit would pull Austin's ass fully out, and I know Josh loved that scene. But Stone Cold on Raw would then tell Linda to go back to the kitchen, dog. I was smiling. Yo, it was good. But Stone Cold would officially go nuts. He would hug Vince with the craziest look in his eyes. But I'd rather run into an Ozzy Osbourne in the woods at night than to look at that again. But around this time though, Vince had WCW going wild. But on the June 25th episode of Raw, Stone Cold kept giving Vince gifts. Stone Cold would roast Deborah's cooking, and Vince was repulsed by the cookies. But Stone Cold was now a generational ass kisser. I thought Paul Heyman was number one, but he got some competition. Once again, Michael Cole would get bullied. But Stone Cold would find Vince backstage and he tried to hug him. But man, I really want to know how people felt about this during the time. But looking back though, WWF had so many dorks on the roster during this time, it was crazy. With Kurt, Jericho, Edge, Christian, etc., it was crazy. But Kurt would be in the ring with Vince, and Austin was a jealous ex. Kurt Angle would hug Vince, and Stone Cold did not take this too kindly. WWF was in shambles. But Vince really gave Shane WCW. That's fire. Even though it's just for a storyline, I know they were loving this. But Austin and Kurt were competing for Vince's affection. At least in Vince's defense, he didn't only have women do love scenes with him. He had men doing it too. Oh, speaking of, Austin caught Vince and Tori in the shower. My God. But on the July 5th episode of SmackDown, Stone Cold and Vince would get matching cowboy hats. How cute. But Kurt would barge in, and Stone Cold got him a gift as well. He gave him that pee-wee ass cowboy hat. I'm crying. This whole storyline was nuts, but I was all for it. The next SmackDown, Stone Cold brought the old guitar and sang Vince some songs. Austin would then pass Kurt the aux, and it was like passing it to a cringy white girl. Vince couldn't take it anymore and he dipped. But the moment was finally here. I've been waiting this whole time for this. One of my favorite segments in wrestling history. The invasion was in full effect, and Vince needed a leader and not a brown-noser. Vince would then deliver one of the most hype promos ever. Vince didn't need the cookie-giving ass-kisser who sang some songs. He needed the old Stone Cold. But this is seriously one of the best / wonky stories ever in my opinion. Vince wanted and was praying for Austin to beat his ass, but he rejected. Vince was begging and pleading, and he even wanted a stunner. Austin paused, but still rejected. Vince was doomed. But on the July 16th episode of Raw, Vince would hunt for Stone Cold and he found him at a bar. He was trying his best, but Stone Cold gave him the cold shoulder. Vince would then try to rally the troops in the locker room and prepare for war. But Stone Cold was shown at the bar, but he got mad and he left. But WWF, ECW, and WCW will be brought outside, and Austin pulled up and he started opening up the cans again. But it would cut again, and Austin was taking out waves of people like it was COD Zombies or something. But it would cut to the ring, like 300 people in that mug. Austin's music would play, and oh my God. This was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. The old Stone Cold was back. This story took such a weird way to get here, but man, it was worth it. This is easily one of the coolest wrestling moments ever, and in my opinion, just as good as Mankind winning the title. But if you're a kid watching this and you don't really know about old wrestling, please go check this out. This is peak right here. But on the next episode of SmackDown, Austin would strike Vince with a guitar. The WWF then had the Invasion pay-per-view, and man, if you were mad at Austin before, you had another thing coming. If they did a few tweets, the Invasion could have been insanely good, but instead it kind of got botched. But Stone Cold would turn on WWF and hit a stunner on Kurt Angle. Austin then joined the Alliance, who was WCW and ECW with Shane and Steph in charge. You can only imagine JR's face when this happened, but Stone Cold basically turned on Vince because Vince didn't appreciate his hugs. I'm crying, bro. Paranoid Austin was incredible. But by the way, Stephanie back then, boy oh boy. And Vince from the 80s looks exactly like Shane right here. Them McMahon jeans are strong. But now, Kurt was the guy for the WWF with his Troy Bolton animations. But at Unforgiving, Austin would lose his title back to Kurt Angle. But on the October 8th episode of Raw, Austin would win it back after Regal turned on Angle. But a week later on Raw, the Alliance would throw a party for RVD. RVD is in the same boat for me as Jeff Hardy. He's just such a legend. But Austin found out that RVD was in the car with the Mag Daddy himself. Also, who the hell is this guy in the background, and why is he standing like he got chopsticks in his ass? But the same show, RVD would have a match with Angle, but Austin would interfere, and they would be both on the ground. RVD got on the turnbuckle, and he was contemplating who to hit. He made up his mind and hit Austin with a 5-star frog splash. What a moment. But at No Mercy, it would be Austin versus Kurt versus RVD, and he would pin RVD for the title and the win. On the next Raw, another Benedict Arnold would be exposed as Kurt Angle joined the Alliance. I never knew this happened, what the heck, but Shane had the 3s on too, he was tough. But at the next Raw, Vince said Austin was going to switch sides, but Austin hit him with a stunner instead. But by the way, the theme Austin had during here, like this time, is one of the biggest song downgrades ever. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, I know he was a heel, but still, like, come on. Next SmackDown, Austin would call out everybody in the Alliance and ask them if they trusted him, and everybody said they did, but Taz got called out and he set the record straight, but Austin stunned him and everybody left. Austin was trying to get him back. He was like, Bubba, Devon, Hurricane. But everybody left, so back to stomping out. But the next week, though, will be one of the craziest show endings ever, with everybody coming in and getting their licks in, and Austin would get the last laugh, but then Vince would come out, and they both were smiling at each other. But at Survivor Series, it would be a 10-man winner-take-all match, and WWF would win after Kurt betrayed the Alliance. At the Raw after, it's like everything reset and went back to normal. It's one of the craziest segments I've ever seen in my life. Like, how is that even possible? But Vince and Kurt would be in the ring, and Ric Flair would return. Flair revealed that he was Vince's business partner, and the Vince ear tug meme was born. They somehow pulled a double turn, and it's like everybody was begging for a Stone Cold face turn, and WWF fixed all their issues, and they adapted again. But what a move. After this, though, on the next Raw, Vince would host one of his world famous Kiss My Ass Club sessions, and Vince was giving out his king tips and having Austin get his lip tender and his breath right, and Vince started throwing it back and doing ass tricks. I don't know, bro. I really don't. But Austin would low blow Vince and start spanking him. After this, though, another legendary segment would be made. The Stone Cold and Booker T Supermarket Brawl. I can't even really explain this though, man. Austin really just beat Booker all over the joint, the funniest way possible, even singing Dean Martin. Rick was having the time of his life, but Vince was appalled. You gotta go check this out. But at Vengeance 2001, the titles will be unified, and this is where Jericho beat Austin and The Rock on the same night. But after this though, their feud would basically be over. Like, they would have a few segments here and there, but nothing really crazy. Austin would go on a feud with the NWO and even face Scott Hall at Mania, but he would be drowning in controversies. Stone Cold would no-show the Raw after WrestleMania and took a week break without their consent. Well, I guess I was wrong about the feud, but it's in real life now. Austin would return and start a feud with Undertaker though, but he would lose and it didn't last long. In May of 2002, Stone Cold would go on Bite This, and he would completely slam the company's booking. You can tell during this run that he was just trolling and he was kind of phoning it a little bit, but still, he didn't care. He then went on to say that he didn't like the brand split either. He was still having great segments though, and still having some good storylines too, so I don't know if I agree with his stance here and him walking out, but when you're at the top and you want to keep pushing and be the best, so I feel it. Austin would be pitched to lose to Brock on Raw, and he straight up walked out again. Around this time, Austin also had a domestic dispute incident against Deborah, and he even went to jail. Speaking of jail, he was also in The Longest Yard, which is an all-time classic. That's how a white man runs a football. But Austin was so racist in this movie. But anyways, Austin would no-show again, and it was just bad. But Vince would cut a heart-wrenching promo, and he was genuinely hurt. Vince let everything loose here, and he put it all out on TV. I've low-key never seen anything like this before. Usually he would relay it to the commentators, but this was actually like a love letter. And Vince actually thanked Austin, and he had a beer to toast, and he left it in the ring. But what a class act by Vince, and this was genuinely fascinating. It's like he died or something. Like, that just goes to show how important Austin was to WWE. Beautiful. But in 2003, Austin and Vince would settle their differences, and he was back. Austin would then enter a feud with The Rock, and The Rock would be the Hollywood sellout heel. This feud was so simple. The Rock never beat Austin at Mania, so he needed to avenge himself. The Rock would defeat Stone Cold at Mania 19, and it would be Austin's retirement match. But Austin would come back as a co-GM with Mick Foley. He'd even throw Mick a hardcore celebration party for Mick Foley, which was kind of cute. Pause. After this, Austin would appear at Tribute to the Troops in 2003, and he even hit Cena and Vince with a stunner. But yeah, Vince and Austin wouldn't really get involved with each other really until 2007 with the Battle of the Billionaires match, and it looked legendary. Stone Cold would also help shave Vince and stun them both. But he would also do a video for Mr. McMahon's Appreciation Night. And in 2009, Austin would be inducted into the Hall of Fame with Vince inducting him. But that just goes to show like how perfect the feud was, and it was fitting. During the speech, Vince also called him the greatest WWE superstar of all time. But that's crazy. Raw would have a special 25th anniversary episode in January of 2018, and he stunned Vince and Shane. At WrestleMania 38, Owens would call out Stone Cold in the main event, and he showed up, and his aura was still off the charts. Stone Cold had his first match in 19 years, and he beat Owens in the main event. On night 2, Vince and Theory would be celebrating in the ring, and Austin would come out and raise some hell and hit two of the most goated stunners you'll ever see. A lot of people hated this, but I thought it was brilliant, and what a way to cap off arguably the greatest rivalry of all time. But wow, man, we made it. If you made it this far in the video, I love you, man, more than you'll ever know. But before I go, I want to say a few things. But this feud really revived WWF and brought them out of the trenches. And a lot of people also like to talk about the same segments, but I love shining a light on the underrated ones because they are hilarious and just as great. I also mentioned some things unrelated to just Austin and Vince's feud, but I wanted to do this right and I didn't want to shortchange you guys. But Stone Cold is undeniably goated, and he has a guaranteed spot on my Mount Rushmore, but you have to give Vince credit here. He was just unbelievably good, and his mic work and expressions were perfect. Like, it was crazy. But I also want to give a very special shout out to Attitude Pop. If it wasn't for this channel, there is no way that this video would even be made. But if you like the Attitude Era, this channel is perfect for you, and it's just genuinely goated. Like, he has everything. Stone Cold and The Rock singing, like Stone Cold running down with Vince, literally everything you could ever want. I also want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. I really wanted to feel like I took you back to the 90s with this one, so I hope you enjoyed it. And I don't know if people like the long vids, so I try to like keep a little range or not, but your guys' comments make my day, even the negative ones. Y'all are funny as hell, man. But from start to end, this feud was genuinely incredible, with probably over 100 good segments. And as a 20-year-old, I finally could say that I understand the hype. But thank you, Vince. Thank you, Stone Cold. Thank you, JR and King. Thank you, WWE/WWF. This feud changed the industry.
As much as I loved working with The Rock, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, no one has ever reflected back at me what you did.